So that kind of got me looking at like weird house prices and stuff like that. Because I have this video here. Actually, let's play this quickly. This guy here, how to fix Canada's housing problem.
How do you define it, Mendel?
Well, what I do is I go back to history.
This guy's Wendell Cox. He was talking about the Canada housing affordability crisis.
And ask, where was housing affordability before our planners got a hold of it and started over-regulating? The 1971 Canadian census asked people how much their house was worth, and it also was the first census that showed median household income. So we have median house values and median household income from 1971. And in fact, I don't know if you've got that first slide yet, but if we could put that up, see that slide basically tells you what has happened only from 2004 to 2022. But my point is, in 1971, the median house price in Toronto was about 3.9. Today it's 9.3. That's the red line. Now, what that means is, if you look at how much the house costs, it was costing 3.9 times your income in 1971, and it's costing 9.3 times now. You can look at Vancouver, which is the dark green line, and it was down under, it was about 4 in 1971. But notice how little housing affordability had deteriorated. It had deteriorated badly in Vancouver, where it had gone from about 4 to about 5. But the basic point is, when you have a market operating, housing tends to be 3 times or less incomes.
Punchline, it's the land price that has been created. It's a bubble that's been created by,
check this out,
planners and governments that have gone overboard at the local level, the provincial level, and they have ruined affordability for housing. So those are the guilty parties. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, for example, what happened in BC I believe the year was 1972, but a lot of people blame the NDP Barnett government, which in 1972.
Dave Barrett, yes.
Barrett, I'm sorry. Yeah. In any event, that was when they imposed the Agricultural Reserve. It was 50 years ago. You go to Ontario. It was, believe it or not, the Mike Harris administration that began the problem in the early 2000s. And then after that, you had Dalton McGuinty of the Liberals come in and finish it with the places to grow problem. And that's when housing affordability went from the 3.9 area to the 9.3 area. Yeah. And again, in all of Australia, this has happened, in all of New Zealand, and there are major parts of the United States where this has happened.
So it just seems to me like he's blaming the planning, right? The central planners on all these restrictions and regulations. And he says it's just happening all over the Western world, right? It used to be at like, if you made 55,000, if let's say 50,000, right? Your house is going to be 150 or 200. Now it's going to be 9 times 50,000. So it's interesting
as well.
So it's the same story again and again. Government is going overboard on these land regulations. It creates a bubble around the land values. It's just unbelievable. So when we look at this issue, though, can we just highlight the other slides that we have here from the report?
Yeah,
this is a very important report here. So what does this slide mean here?
Well, remember we talked about how
so here's this is like only from 2015, right? We talked about how long they've been in power, right? 2015 to 2023. So a couple of years through COVID, but from 2015, and the green bars is 2015. So that's that percentage of the land value or the housing affordability number, right? So like, and let's just use the first one, Barrie, Ontario, right? And this is all Ontario. This is like the golden horseshoe in Ontario. 4.4 to 7.1, Brantford 4 to 7.6, Guelph 3.9 to 8.2. That's just it since 2015.
What's going on in Toronto is unbelievable. Um, Toronto, of course, is the biggest recipient of your very strong international migration that's occurring in Canada. Most of the immigrants, I think most of the immigrants from outside the country are moving into the Toronto metropolitan area. But what's happening is that in the environment where you can't build anything anymore in Toronto because the regulations are so bad, it's now forcing people to move out to find the housing they want. Because, you know, somebody doesn't move from India looking to live in a high-rise apartment. Most young kids who are forming families are not interested in trying to raise kids on a 40th floor condominium.
So what do you think about that? You think the people moving here from India don't want to raise a family in a condo?
No, and most of them have money.
And you see all this land in Canada, all this land, and they're like, no, just go in that little condo there.
So the basic point is what's happened is a huge amount of out-migration from the Toronto CMA, metropolitan area. Same things happened in Vancouver as well. And so what you see here is a list of the markets nearby Toronto, places like Barrie, Guelph, Kitchener-Waterloo, Peterborough, etc., where this shows what was the median multiple, the median house price.
Okay, I already talked about that.
We're
So
going
I'm
to make
going to report to
rational
this last part
decisions
here.
and move to other provinces. So I think your report speaks to that, does it not, Wendell? In the
Yes, I think we have a chart on that as well. Let me, if you don't mind, give you a brief geographical history lesson. Statistics Canada breaks the country into sort of three classes of populations.
I think actually, do you think people are moving into the cities or out of the cities?
Depends on which people.
Centers. A population center is an area of continuous development. So, for example, in the Vancouver area, that would go from like North Vancouver out to almost to Mission, and down to White Rock, complete, where there's urbanization. That's a population center. You have about 1,000 population centers in Canada, ranging in size from 5.7 million in Toronto to 1,000 in St. Andrews, Manitoba. Well, the basic point is the largest group of these are called census metropolitan areas. They include Vancouver, they include Victoria, and Toronto, etc. In the last 5 years, a net 252,000 people have moved out of these places and moved elsewhere in the country. The second group of population centers is what the Stats Canada calls census agglomerations. These are communities of from 10,000 people to 50,000 or to 100,000 people. 125,000 of the people that moved out of the metropolitan areas moved to these smaller communities. But the amazing thing is that 127,000 of these people moved to places that are even smaller, places that aren't even census agglomerations, places in some cases that don't even have any urbanization at all.
Crazy, eh? So I'm in that, that last group there, 127,000, obviously moving to a tiny town. I mean,
Me too.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that I just didn't think that I always thought it was a bit of an illusion. Like we heard people wanting to move out of the cities, but he's saying.
But then add non-domestic migration to that. And I bet you that census metropolitan fucking skyrockets.
I wonder if maybe that's maybe they saw this coming, and then that's one of
because the other thing those Indians aren't interested in is moving here and living in the country, as near as I can tell.
Right. They want a subdivision with their own detached home. I mean, this interesting video. I gotta give a shout out to who the video is from. It's from Return to Reason, and it's live with this Wendell Cox guy, but they talk about how they want just detached homes or we're so popular, right? People just want the detached homes in the subdivision, and I was kind of against that for a while. I didn't want to live in that little, what's that ville, the Pleasantville, or that where everything's the same, and I want to live in the city, right? Over that, or the country, which is kind of where I'm at now, not in a subdivision, but in a tiny town. But I can totally understand the need now, or the want for a detached home, to make your own.
All
So
right,
then
right.
then I started quickly looking just I mean, I don't have to go through this, but I did look. I was looking at. Well, I wonder if how bad it's always been, right? Like for average income compared to houses, right? So I found this chart from average incomes of families and unattached individuals. That's what you're talking about, the unattached individuals. And this is from the Canada Council on Social Development. Look at this. It goes from it gets the wages were like 25,000 in the mid 50s. They went up to 35,000 in the mid 60s, and then they hit about 50,000 in the mid 70s. So, and then they stayed at the mid 50s until 1995. They really didn't go up from 75 to 95 for that 20 years.
I think they probably still haven't gone up.
Right. Share this tab instead. So I was just looking at the like first time home buying in the 50s and 60s, right? Just to see. So in the 50s, they've got this example. In 57, this person purchased a home for 30,000. And just showing how the prices of homes have gone up so much. I don't want to. I mean, okay, so let's say that same home there went for 1.6 million, so 52 times their original purchase price, right? Back in 58, I don't want to go to the 50s much. I want to move up to the 60s here. In 67, this Toronto's average home prices in 67 were 24 grand. The average price for a detached home in Treb, C9 district, 24. This is back in 2014 was 2.5 million. So it was 60 times its original price. And if we go to the 70s here, the purchase price was 34,000 in 73. Actually, the average Toronto home was 40,000. The numbers purchased. There was another buyer here, which was 34,000. And now, of course, they've gone up to again like 16. So this one is 16 times. So it's not quite as much from the 50s and 60s, but it's still 16 times its 73 price. And you saw this is back in 70. So that's when the wages started to be mid 50s, right? And you're purchasing a home for, I don't know, it says here 34,000. That's crazy.
Okay, so yeah, but so what was was it 1967? When was the house?
Which was 60 times?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was 67. The numbers purchase price was 42,000. That same average price for a home in that district went to 2.5 million. Yeah. They had 3,000 down payment, half of which was saved and half was borrowed. Interest rates were 9%, and their household income was between 11 and 13,000. So it was three times their income. Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
The house was 60 times. Is that what it was?
Well, the average was 62. So the average in that area. So they're looking at the Toronto area, that downtown Toronto area, probably that golden circle thing that he was talking about, that golden horseshoe.
So the price of gold per ounce in 1967 was $35.
Okay.
What happens if you times that by 60?
35 times 60?
35 times 60 is going to give you 2,100. What's the price of gold right now?
I don't know.
Can you check quick?
Oh, you want me to check? Per ounce or?
Per ounce, yeah.
It says it's $22.99. Wow, isn't that interesting?
So I would argue that the price of that house hasn't really gone up at all. The price of your dollar has gone down 60 times.
Because gold is the exact same.
The same amount of gold would buy you that house today as would have bought you that house in 1967.
Yeah.
If you were using gold as a currency instead of this garbage that they give us.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that's exactly right on the money there.
I've been running that little thing on a few different things lately, and it almost always seems to line up if you use the gold price as a thing. So the same amount of gold will usually buy you something today as it would have bought you 50 years ago.